Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Thriving Minds podcast with your host, Walter Parada, where we strive to provide you with empowering talks so you can live to thrive. I hope you find yourself in the right frame of mind, focusing on all the things within your control. So today's episode, we're going to be talking about actionable information. Information can be such a powerful force that enables us to reach magnificent milestones, to gain insightful clues and answers, to know what to do. And when information is acquired, it gives an individual confidence to proceed and take an action. A lot of times, what stops many of us from doing what we want is a simple fact of not knowing or not having enough information. But you can equip yourself with information that makes things less and less difficult to where it becomes a lot more manageable. Things still can be hard with information, but you're chipping away at what seems like this almost insurmountable task or feat. So with each bit of information that you gain, the more and more that you're chipping away at the vastness of what you're taking on. This is part of building that momentum in the right direction to really get you going. And once you're on track, taking action just seems a lot more natural and less overwhelming. For some people, they're able to effectively just do things without very little information because of their resourcefulness or that self-sufficiency to figure things out. But for others, it can be very difficult, and information bridges the gap between self-doubt and believing that you can do something. Think of some of the common things that we might say to ourselves that limit us. Oh, I don't know how to lead people, so I won't apply for that promotion that I really want. Or, I think I can't afford to buy a house because I don't know how to manage my finances well. Or to say, I don't earn enough. These are all comments that we've all probably told ourselves at some point in our lives, and that stops us from doing what we really want. People are naturally looking for the most efficient way of doing things because we want to conserve our energy. And this tends to be the lazy approach. So if we simply haven't been taught it or simply have not been shown what exactly to do, we might think that's the end of it. To overcome this, simply start off by seeking information that you can use. Something that empowers you to know just enough to get you going. There's no need to have all the answers or having everything figured out before taking action, but just enough to help you gain confidence that makes you want more and more information. This naturally builds that initiative that really leads the way. So in the case of wanting that promotion that is taking on more of a leadership role and you have yet to lead people, you can look to leaders that you admire, or if you don't know any, look for organizations and teams that have sustained success. These are good reference points to start off with. Research how they conduct and prepare themselves. Things like the habits that they have, how they interact with the people that they lead, and look towards those difficult moments, especially failures, because you can learn many valuable things from it. Some of them have probably even written books on their experiences, and you can take lessons directly from that. By gaining this information, you're equipping yourself with what action that you can take. And with enough of this, it builds that confidence to change the thinking and the self-talk from, I don't know if I can do this because I have yet to lead people, to now saying, even though I have yet to lead people, I'm gaining the information that empowers me to take on that leadership role. I'm becoming. And that's the same concept of the scenario of wanting to buy a house. Yeah, currently maybe you're not as strong financially to buy a house right now, but you're a work in progress to get in there. Searching for the knowledge that empowers you to get you where you want. To effectively gain this information, it's important to know what type of learning style that best fits you. We talked about this in one of the previous episodes about the different learning styles, and generally there's 6. So when you can understand how you optimally process information, you can find those ways of doing so. So for some, reading is all they really need to get them going. But for others, it could be visuals and audios that helps them take in the messages and it registering. But no matter what, you got to find information that you can actually use. Ask yourself the simple fundamental questions of, do I understand what I'm processing? And if so, how can I apply it? Without this, it makes the pursuit of knowledge unappealing and it turns you off from taking that initiative. This is where the trap lies in that gets you back into, I don't know how to do it, so I won't even try. So you got to find information that is relatable. And in the beginning, it might take a little longer than anticipated to understand what's going on. So have reasonable expectation going into any new territory, and this is going to help you be more patient. Sometimes things are going to click right away, and other times it won't. So recognize what is working, and when they're not, just give it some time to let information marinate. This gives you that chance of later having that aha moment. When you can start off with a strong foundation in knowing how to acquire information that is suitable for you, it becomes clear what you need to get done. This naturally builds on itself, that works as a stepping stone that gets you further and further ahead. And this becomes so much more powerful when you go ahead and search for it on your own. That's part of the initiative of having the urge, feeding yourself more and more. Also be aware that by taking in more and more information, that does not make you better informed. It can make you more informed that bogs you down from making reasonable decisions. So differentiate between more information and better information. The purpose is what you take in, how you can use it. Just the other day, I was listening to the stock market news, and one of the analysts points out that the Dow Industrial and the S&P indices are trading at record highs with very high multiples, indicating a premium on the stocks that people are willing to pay for. So what this means is that the stock prices, in a general sense, are a bit overvalued or overpriced. And that same analyst says, okay, what am I supposed to do with this information? Should I go ahead and sell all my stocks? And then what? When do I figure to get back in? And this is in response to a lot of negative headlines out there. So much of this gets people to worry and fear. This is understandable. It's called out to give people a heads up of the potential risks that are present. But doing this kind of gets people climbing the wall of worry, constantly ruminating about all the things that could go wrong, preparing for the worst. But then what? What do you do after the worst comes? Or what happens if it doesn't come at all? Are you prepared for better than feared scenarios, or even for ideal scenarios? And to further expand on this, what if the worst doesn't come in the short to medium term? Yeah, it might happen over the long term, but what happens in between that? It means missing out on incredible opportunities during that time. So let's say a person does use this news that gets them to sell all their stock just to avoid the value of it going down, even though things are at all-time high. Eventually, there's going to be a natural pullback. That's just the way things go in the stock market and even in life in general, and so many things that we do. But then when do you go back in? In being scared out of the market, it could be missing out on another 12% upside. These are things that are so difficult to predict. So reacting based off of negative headlines, being quick to avoid risk altogether when uncertainty or rough periods occur, can be more overwhelming than just staying the course. What the analyst was conveying was just to stay invested. There's going to be times where the markets are at extreme levels on both sides, both in good and bad. So when things are particularly bad, it can feel like everything is totally abysmal. It's only going to get worse from here. But when things are good, it can feel so euphoric where nothing can go wrong. And in both scenarios, the good and the bad, there's eventually going to be a bottom to the lows and a top to the good. So it's not going to be a constant free falling or trees growing to the sky. Eventually, there's going to be a washout period that resets to eventually find its footing. A couple years ago, I met this retired person, and we're just kind of talking about how things are going. And she tells me she pulled out all her investment money, her retirement account, when the Dow Industrial Jones was at about 23,000. And today the Dow is at 42,000. That's 82% that was missed out on. Her retirement could have grown by 82%. I think she was well off, but this just illustrates that how are you going to take in that negative information? Does it make you just want to pull everything out and be safe? For the most part, talking about this particular scenario in the stock market, it really does relate to so many different aspects of our lives. And you can use the same concept to avoid doing things out of fear and staying the course if it's what you want to do, and you determine it's the right fit. And this involves sifting through vast amounts of information that you're exposed to. So you're trying to decipher which one is relevant and actionable to you. A common thing that high school students are trying to figure out is what to do in the next phase of their lives, whether to go to college or not. Is it worth getting a degree? What's the potential debt that they might owe in trying to get a higher education? And what job or career can they have? There's this one conversation between these two people that I knew, and they were talking about why it does not make sense to go to medical school with the potential of the high debt load that they're more likely to take on. Average medical school debt in 2023 was about $200,000. Seems like quite a bit, right? If you just look at it based on that, then right away it might sway a person to not want to go down that path. But that's looking at information in a very limited way. Remember, we need to ask, how is this information applicable to me? Can I use this in a way that's going to empower me or benefit me, and not just simply run for the hills just because of the hurdles along the way? So as the conversation's going on, a lot of things are going through my head, and I'm thinking about, what if the potential student really has a passion for providing healthcare to people who need it? You know, the potential high returns from them working in the medical field. So depending on what career path you take within the industry, doctors earn on average a yearly salary of $105,000, and the yearly wages can range anywhere from $69,000 to $353,000. So while going down that path is a big commitment, both financially and time-wise, you know, because they do a 4-year program to get their bachelor's degree, then go on to medical school, do X amount of years doing residency, before they actually can be out on their own, running their own practice. But what's lost is the potential that they can pay back their debt within a few years if they manage it properly. But simply to act based on very limiting information, you know, that going to medical school puts you back quite a bit financially early on, over the long run, your total return, you know, your profits after all your expenses, can be significantly higher than if you decided to choose a career path with very little to no debt. In scenarios like this, when that type of negative information is put out there should be the thinking of asking more questions, to pry. All right, if there's a large amount of debt that's going to be taken on, what's the potential return once working in the chosen field, 5-10 years after that? It's the same concept for lawyers or pilots. Yes, they have to pay a high amount up front, but the returns could be so much more over the long run. So if fear becomes so much more motivating to get you to jump out, to avoid taking risk, ask yourself or find answers to what can settle down that fear. Sometimes just hearing it from others makes it bigger than what it really is. And if you fail to dig deeper into what really worries you, it can lead to missed opportunities. It could just gnaw at you. When I was looking at going to college, I would see all these numbers of how expensive it was to attend. Obviously, it had me worried thinking about the debt that I would take on and that I'd be paying it back the rest of my life. But once I started finding information that I can use, applying for scholarships, grants, housing alternatives, managing my expenses, and getting a job, all that provided me with the confidence that it was not as big as what I imagined. So back in 2010, to go to an in-state university, tuition was about $7,600 a year. But with scholarships and grants that I qualified for, I think I only paid about $1,500 per year for tuition. Housing was my biggest expense, but I lived at a very affordable off-campus apartment. I'd take the bus every day to class, manage my food and entertainment expenses to a reasonable level, and eventually after that first semester, I got a job, so I had income, and in the end, I remember I took on no debt and actually came out ahead a couple $1,000. I was able to make money from college, not so much that college helped me make money, but during that time, I was able to save up enough to help me get ahead. So as all of this is unfolding, I thought that some of that information that I was exposed to was so misleading. It's talking in average terms with average student loan debt. I just saw so many different avenues and was not limited by the little bit of information that I was given. So when you can access the information for yourself, you start digging and digging, you're finding so many solutions and answers to the worries and the problems that you're dealing with. So for me, even though I got a degree in agriculture, worked in the field for a few number of years before leaving it completely, college did benefit me tremendously. It really did develop my thinking for the better in an environment to thrive. So college, for me, and I think for a lot of other people, wasn't all about the facts and numbers, the information that I gained from the classes themselves. But what was the most valuable was everything else that I experienced, in gaining independence. It really was a nice transition in my overall development. So instead of going straight from high school out into the real world, getting a job, starting a career, that can be a big shock because there's a pretty big adjustment period. For some people, their employees can be so focused on the bottom line, all about results, showing very little patience for people starting off. So when mistakes are made, people get chewed out for it, and it gets them to fear, things at work or work in general. Couple that with running your own finances, maybe living out on your own, less of a support system around you. All that can become compounded that can really restrict a person. I was fortunate enough not to be exposed to the real world at such a rapid pace because maybe that would have really stunted my growth. Maybe it would have even made me bitter. So I was afforded that opportunity to continue to be in the school environment, settling into the next phase of my life, being able to transition better. And even while I was still in college, I still hear some of the negative stories about people who went on to get a degree and now they're over $100,000 in debt and didn't even get a job in a field that they got their degree in. That's part of being able to ask yourself, all right, this information that you're telling me, what can I do with it? So just because somebody you knew had over $100,000 in debt and didn't get a job in the field that they prepared themselves for, does that mean that's going to happen to me? I don't know their situation. It could be totally different from mine. Maybe they went to an out-of-state college and were not able to secure funding through grants or scholarships or get a job to help offset some of those expenses. But there's good in hearing that negative information because it raises your awareness of the risks that lie out there, and you can take that a step further to see what led to it and how you can prepare to effectively counter it. Simply just taking in that information and staying put is not going to serve you well. So when you can do your own homework and figure out what's beyond that information, what can you apply with it that gives you actionable advice? Many times, people in general are trying to look out for us, but fall short in providing us information that is helpful. One time, my mom and my sister, we go to Disney World, and one of her clients told her that a relative of theirs went to Disney World, and the food that they brought in, they were told to throw it out. My mom and I talked about it, and we both said, that's odd because Disney, since we've been going there for 18 years, has always allowed us to bring in our own food. So because we had 2 days at the park, the first day we decided, all right, you know what? We're going to heed the advice of what we heard to avoid having our food thrown out. So as we're at the park, eventually it got to the point where we were hungry and bought food there. But we noticed that another family brought in their own food. And my mom and I talked about it. You know what? We should have disregarded that information that we were given. That advice, that bad advice. So the next day, we did bring in our food and everything was fine. They let us in, no problem. But we fell into the trap of being motivated by fear. Fear of having our food thrown out when it could have been as simple as, you know what? I could have called up Disney Guest Services to find out if that was true or not. And this just emphasizes the lesson of figuring out what can you do with information that you were given or that you were told. Sometimes what needs to be done is to check the validity. Question the source to see, is this legitimate? In this case, we heard it from a client's relative. There could have been some fumbled information that was not clearly told. We failed to do our own homework. So the information that you encounter, you also got to decipher in what context it's being used. The concept of what worked in the past or for someone else may not be applicable to you. Getting a college degree may not be suitable for you right now, even though your parents did, and that's what helped them be successful. This does not mean to discontinue learning and educating yourself. It's just identifying what information as a whole or in pieces fits into your needs and wants. For some people, it may be suitable to go to college even though they're unclear of what they want to pursue. And for others, not knowing is enough to want to do something else. It's the concept of correctness, breaking free from it to figure out what's applicable to you. Some information you can acquire through secondhand, through others' experiences and stories that can help you navigate your journey, while other times it'll be through your very own firsthand experiences of not knowing what to do, but doing it anyways to see what happens. Some information you can acquire secondhand through others' experiences and stories that can help you navigate your journey, while other times it'll be through your very own firsthand experiences of not knowing what to do, but doing it anyways to see what happens. Use a combination of both. The secondhand information makes things a little bit more clear to operate with greater accuracy that makes progress quicker. And the firsthand experience can be so valuable, but rough and messy, that leaves a long-lasting impact for the better if you're equipped to handle the wild outcomes. Having a balanced approach between the two allows you to keep going in the face of risks that are present. There will be a tendency to be one-sided in the approach, so be aware of when you exclusively choose one. Waiting to have the information is going to be beneficial at times, so you can be accurate in big moments, but also knowing when to just forge ahead that strengthens your conviction and your resilience. Sometimes it's going to be a big swing and a miss, and other times you're going to knock it out of the park. This is just something that you need to get a feel for. It does not need to be 50-50, but a reasonable balance. Similar to a batter in baseball, figuring out which balls to take a swing at and which ones to pass on. Actionable information is truly powerful that can transcend you because it's something that's understood and can be applied to achieve many great things. It's just a process of acquiring and deciphering what is relevant to you and your situation. It's knowing when to use what pieces and when to defer for later. The more you're on that pursuit of what you need to know, the more progress you'll make. So it's no longer about, I don't know how to do what I truly want, but getting a little taste of information that fuels you of not knowing, yet searching for the knowledge to get you going that builds momentum in the right direction. Where confidence carries you forward to just keep learning and learning. Acquire information that you can use. If not, what good is it? I really hope you enjoyed this episode. If you're interested in more topics like this, become a Thriving Minds member at www.thrivingminds.live. It's your personal development resource so you can build that right mindset so you can live to thrive. All right, until next time.